Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we are out in beautiful northern Wisconsin doing some early season catch and release trout fishing in late February. And I tell you what, I just got through a spot where I caught a bunch of really nice trout, and we're definitely going to go back and watch that footage. So before that though, I wanted to make sure you guys know this is also going to be a very informational video. Where to find these fish in late winter and early spring, what baits to throw and what conditions. We're going to go back and watch some footage from this morning. Then I'll get into the tactical stuff, how-tos. Then we're gonna go fishing some more and hopefully catch a bunch more trout. And I'm gonna tell you about the bait that you should have to catch these fish, no matter where you're fishing early season. Let's go fishing, guys, and catch some trout. Look at that, guys. The first trout of the day. Get my hands wet here. Absolutely beautiful little brook trout. Whoop, he got off, that's all right. That's a good start. There we go. Fish on. Nice one. Heck yeah. Yeah, buddy. This is exactly why I love this early season trout fishing. Just pristine fish like that one. That one smoked the Euro Tackle B Vibe. Again, why I like those, single hook, super easy release. I'm gonna let this guy go. That is a beautiful little brownie. Nice. First hole, 2 fish so far. See if we got more in here. Oh, there's one. There's one. Nice, feels good, feels good. Another nice brown, I think. On the B Vibe. Oh yeah, this one's even bigger, I think. They're about the same size. Oh yeah, buddy. Oh yeah. Nice fish. Nice fish. Almost a carbon copy of the last one. Oh, that's beautiful. Gorgeous fish. Gonna let that guy go here. Yeah. All right, little B Vibe, go do your thing. Go catch me another one. That's 3 trout out of this first hole. There's one. Fish on. Number 4. Number 4 hooked up in this hole, folks. Man, the colors on these things just unbelievable. Quick unhook. Another beautiful brown in this nice deep wintering hole. It's exactly what where we're expecting to find them. There you go, buddy. Let's keep at it. That's 4 on the B Vibe here. Oh, fish on. Nice one. Moved up to a new hole here, and this is the best fish yet. Yes! That is probably a 17-inch brown right there. Beautiful fish. Let's let her go. Oh, another one. Jeez. Another one, guys. This is nuts. Another nice brown. Unreal, guys. Another gorgeous brown on the B Vibe. I may end up fishing the B Vibe all day today at this rate. All right, cast number 3 to this hole, guys. Not the best cast, but Yep, there's another one. 3 in a row, guys. Another nice one. Very different colors on this fish. Much fewer spots and a little less orange. Gorgeous fish though. Again, that hook comes out super easy. See you later, buddy. Oh, big fish, big fish, big fish. Big fish right by the road. Saw him eat it. That was crazy, guys. Oh, no way. Actually saw him eat that. Big fish. Oh yeah. What a dandy, guys. That's the one we're after right there. Oh, there's one. There's one. What do we got here? Another nice brownie. Oh no, is this a brook trout? No, it's brown. There's another one following it too. Another nice one. Gorgeous fish. Man, look at that fish. Oh, wow, this is turning into quite a day. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed part 1 of this video. Before I move into the tactical part of this video and part 2, I just wanted to thank you for watching. And if this video has given you any value, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And I also wanted to mention that we're fishing these fish in a 100% catch and release situation. In Wisconsin, we cannot target these fish with live bait until the first Saturday in May, and we cannot keep any of these fish until the first Saturday in May. So make sure if you go and do this, that you're taking care of those trout, you're keeping them in the water as much as possible, handling them with wet hands only to get your pictures, and using as few hooks and barbs as possible to land these fish so you can release them without any harm. It's a great opportunity we have to fish this season in Wisconsin, and I want to make sure that we can continue to do it. So let's take care of those fish and make sure that we're doing everything properly. Now let's get into part 2, and we'll start with the where. Where can we catch these trout? So as far as where to find trout in the late winter and early spring, you want to look for the lower stretches of trout streams and the bigger trout streams that smaller streams dump into. The reason is trout in the late winter, well, basically all through the winter, are looking for slower current and deeper water. Oftentimes in the wintertime, the current is low, the flow is low, the water's clear, so those trout are going to get pushed to the deepest holes that they can find so that they feel safe. Also, cover is another key. So if you can find brush, trees, that kind of thing, especially near that deeper water, that's really what you want to look for these winter trout. And as I mentioned, the streams that flow into bigger streams oftentimes aren't going to have many trout in them. And if they are, they're probably small. So what happens in the wintertime is the trout migrate out of all the smaller creek arms and stuff that you find them in the summertime, and they move into the larger rivers that hold trout. So if you're thinking about all the spots you fished in the past in the summertime, avoid those little brooks and tiny streams for the most part, and either move to the lower sections of those streams where there's more water, or actually even try some of the bigger streams that those flow into. And don't be afraid to try streams that aren't even designated trout streams, because those rivers will oftentimes have trout migrate into them for just the winter period because they're cold enough to support those trout. And some of those nice deep holes on rivers you typically catch smallmouth and walleye in might hold some nice trout in the wintertime. So use Trout Routes. It's a great app to find spots. I highly recommend Trout Routes, and I'll leave a link in the description below for that app because it does help you kind of narrow it down, especially in areas you haven't fished before. So a couple more things to pay attention to when you're early season trout fishing are water temperature and water clarity. So once you find the stream you want to fish, check it and see how clear the water looks, and also pay attention to the temperature. So a lot of times what happens, if you have a lot of snow, you might have a really warm day, but it's going to melt snow and it's actually going to create a bunch of runoff, and the water's going to get cloudy, and it's also going to drop in temperature because all that snow is melting and it's 32 degrees, and it's going to run into the river and actually cool the river down. So if you have a lot of snow melt, really warm day, sometimes that's not the best time to go fishing because you want the water warm. This year we don't have any snow, so you get a 55, 60 degree day, that water temperature is going to warm fast and you're going to catch a bunch of trout. And that's what happened on this last trip. It was a really nice warm sunny day. The temps rose, the trout bit really well, and that's kind of what you're hoping for on a good early season trout outing, is rising temperatures and not too much runoff. Now, as far as how to approach these trout, in the wintertime, trout can be really spooky because of the low clear water. So I always approach from downstream, try and be as quiet as I possibly can, and sneak up to the edges and make long casts quartering upstream and coming back down towards me. That's usually the best way to approach these streams. Just be really stealthy because especially in smaller streams, these trout can be unbelievably spooky, and you really got to be stealthy to get a bait in front of them without making them just take off. All right, guys, let's talk baits. So as you saw in the video, I was using one bait the entire time that I was fishing, and that bait is the Eurotackle B-Vibe. It's a 2-inch plastic swim bait, and I'm rigging that on a 32nd to 1/8 ounce jig head depending on the size of water I'm fishing. Basically, I will fish this bait about 90% of the time that I'm trout fishing early season. It just flat out catches trout, and I always throw it in gold on a black jig head. That is the winning combo. I hesitate to say there's any magic bait, but if there's anything that comes close, it's that combo right there. I will leave a link in the description below for this exact setup. You should definitely pick some up if you plan to early season trout fish. It's a super versatile bait that you can fish all the way to the bottom of the deepest hole by letting it sink, or you can cast it, start retrieving right away in shallower water. It's got a super subtle tail action, and it just flat out catches trout. So that's bait number one, the B-Vibe. Now you can use other plastics, you know, bug imitating plastics and stuff like that, and they certainly work. But for me, most of the time, it's gonna be that bait right there. Now, as far as retrieving the B-Vibe, what I really like to do is cast across the current a little quartering upstream, let it sink to the bottom, and then just slow roll it back. Let the current kind of swing it, but keep it moving slow. That's the key to all these baits in the wintertime, is moving them slow. Those trout's metabolism is a little bit lower, and I like to move them as slow as I can just to keep that tail thumping. Now, towards the end of the retrieve, I may speed it up a little bit to get those trout that might be following to smack it before it gets to my feet. I'll give it a little bit of extra buzz at the end and just speed it up, and oftentimes that triggers a strike. Now, another great bait for early season trout is the spinner, and the spinner catches trout any time of year, but I do have buddies who fish spinners basically exclusively in the early season, and they catch a lot of fish and some big fish. And basically a straight up Mepps Aglia is a great choice. You know, anywhere from 2 to size even 5. A lot of guys throw spinners that are too small, especially for big trout, even in the wintertime. So like 3s and 4s for bigger trout, 2s for smaller trout are great. And we're just gonna cast these and pretty much straight retrieve them on a slow roll. You don't want to move them too fast. You don't want to burn them in the wintertime. The trout's metabolism is a little slower, so you want to retrieve these just a straight slow roll, let them swing in the current, and you'll get bit. I mean, they're a foolproof bait and definitely catch trout. Now, if you would like to learn more about spinner fishing, I have a super in-depth deep dive on spinners. I'll leave a link in the description below. It's almost a half an hour going into color, size, retrieves, all that. So make sure you check that out. Now, a great third category of baits is the stick bait or the minnow bait. This is a Eurotackle Z Spender. This is my favorite trout stick bait. It's a 2-inch bait. It's neutrally buoyant, has a really good action, gets down to about 4 or 5 feet on the retrieve. And the key to these baits is getting them to hang perfectly still when you jerk and pause. You want them neutrally buoyant, so when you jerk and stop, that bait just stops right there. And that's a great retrieve for especially slower water. And I've caught a lot of bigger trout on that bait right there. You can also cast these and straight retrieve them. The one disadvantage to these is there is a lot of hooks on them. So it might be a good idea to pinch the barb down since we are doing catch and release fishing. Sometimes you can get a lot of hooks in those fish and damage their mouths. So if you're using stick baits, I recommend pinching the barbs on them for an easier release. Now, a fourth category would be flies. Now, I'm not a huge fly fisherman. I primarily spinner fish for trout, but I do some fly fishing for sure. And I oftentimes will carry flies with me, and I'll actually throw them on spinning gear with just a small split shot, especially nymphs, little stone flies and stuff like that. Especially if I know there's fish in a hole and they're being real finicky. I have oftentimes caught them on flies. And for you fly guys, keep it simple, use nymphs. Nymphs are where it's at in the wintertime. You know, you want to drift, you know, prince nymphs, little stonefly nymphs, little hellgrammites, anything like that is going to catch you fish in the wintertime. Just drift in those deeper pools. Sometimes you may need to add a split shot to get it down there where those trout are at. But flies catch fish any time of the year. And I know there's a lot of hardcore fly guys that's all they fish, and they do great in the late winter, early spring period. All right, guys, let's talk trout rods. So my favorite trout rod is actually the St. Croix Avid 6'6" light fast action. This is a great all-around trout rod. I've caught so many fish on this rod, and it can cast these smaller baits a mile, but it's got good backbone for those hook sets and a nice quick tip. And I don't know, it's just my favorite trout rod. I would highly recommend it. Again, I'll leave links in the description below for these rods, but I have this rigged up with just a Pflueger President reel, very basic but good reel, and I think that's a 2000 size. I've got that spooled up with Euro Tackle 10-pound micro braid, which is unbelievable line for small baits. I can cast this bait like further than I need to with that line. And then I've got that tied to just a little micro swivel and a leader about 2 feet long of 6-pound Seagar fluorocarbon. And that goes directly to my bait. So that's my primary trout setup, and that's what I throw the B-Vibe on. Now, when I'm fishing spinners, I'm gonna upsize my rod. So this is actually another St. Croix Avid, but this is a 7-foot medium light. Now, you also wanna upsize your line when you're fishing spinners, because you're often fishing for bigger trout and closer to cover. And I like to upsize to at least 15-pound braid. And I think I've got Suffix 832 on this rod. And I've gone up to like a 8 to 10-pound leader when I'm throwing spinners. It's just a little bit heavier setup. That bait's moving a little faster, and the trout aren't quite as wary, and you don't have to cast light baits as much. So I typically upsize my line for this spinner setup. Now, another rod I've been experimenting with quite a bit is the Trout series by St. Croix. And this is actually designed for fishing really small baits. And this is kind of what I use to throw my nymphs on usually. This is a 7-foot rod, and it's got a little bit slower action to it. So it loads up a little bit more and absorbs those head shakes when you're using tiny hooks on smaller baits. So on this Trout series rod, I've got the same 10-pound micro braid from Euro Tackle set up, and just a swivel to a 6-pound leader. And that's a great setup for smaller streams, smaller trout, and more finesse presentations. I'll leave a link in the description for all these setups, but that's my typical 3 trout rods that I'll consider bringing with me on an early season trip. All right, guys, well, I hope you found that information extremely helpful. I just walked back into the next stretch and I went straight to the deepest pool, because that's where I expect the biggest fish to be this time of year, is in that darkest, deepest, slowest pool. So we're gonna stick with the B-Vibe. There's no sense changing it up when this bait has been so hot today. If you wanna see other videos about different baits specifically, I'll leave a couple in the description below. I've got a really specific in-depth spinner fishing video and a couple others, so make sure you check those out. But we're gonna keep throwing this, see if we can catch some more fish. Finally got one in this hole, but not a huge one. But it is a trout. So I'm starting to wonder if there's maybe one really big fish in here and he's suppressing all these smaller fish. There's one. I knew there had to be one in there. There we go. Just worked our way up from the bottom. Just swinging that jig across the current and fish out. There we go. Yet another beautiful brown trout right there. Super easy release with that single hook. Beautiful fish. Alright guys, this isn't a huge run, but it's big enough that it should hold a couple fish. Oh, big one. Actually big one. Did not expect that big of a fish in this little thing. Yep, it's a nice one. Oh, really? Crazy. I actually saw him come up and eat it. That was cool. Again, guys, you just can't beat this bee vibe. It's so subtle for this low clear water. There we go. Gosh, another gorgeous brown. Look at that brown. What a fish. And this little run, just slow enough and deep enough to hold a fish like that. Well, that was a great fish to end the day on. I want to thank you guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because there's a lot more videos coming. I appreciate every one of you. Get hooked up, guys. We'll see you next time.